There's a big difference between being noticed and being needed. See, popularity is the art of being seen. But being valuable, that's the art of being missed if you're gone. Popularity gets you attention, but value gets you respect. Popularity is often temporary. It can rise and fall with a single trend, a change in opinion, or a new face that captures the crowd's attention. But value, real value, endures. It sticks around. It makes people think of you even when you're not in the room. Because when you're valuable, you're not just in their feed. You're in their life. We live in a world where everyone's fighting for attention. People shouting, "Look at me, look at what I'm doing, look at how great I am." But here's the thing, attention is cheap. You can buy it, you can manufacture it, you can manipulate it, but impact, you've got to earn that. And that's where value comes in. See, impact comes from what you give, not what you gain. It's what you deposit in others, not what you extract from them. That's the heart of being valuable. You show up to serve, not just to shine. Now, there's nothing wrong with being recognized. Recognition feels good. We all want to be appreciated. But recognition without contribution is just noise. It fades. You get the applause, maybe a few compliments, and then what? If you didn't leave something behind that helps people, a solution, an idea, an example, even just a moment of truth, then all you've done is perform. And performance doesn't last. It entertains, but it rarely transforms. Think about the people who have made the biggest difference in your life. Chances are, they weren't the most popular. They were probably the most honest, the most consistent, the most present. They added something to your life. Maybe it was a mentor, maybe a teacher, maybe a friend who saw your potential before anyone else did. That's value. They may not have had 1,000,000 fans, but they gave you something you'll never forget. That's impact. So why do we chase popularity so much? Because it looks good. It feels rewarding. It gives us a sense of validation. But here's the danger. If you start chasing attention for its own sake, you stop focusing on what makes you worth that attention. You start shaping your life to please others instead of developing yourself to serve them. You'll say things you don't believe, do things that aren't aligned with your purpose, and wake up one day wondering why you feel so disconnected from who you really are. Because then popularity becomes your goal, authenticity becomes your casualty. But if you focus on value, on developing your skills, strengthening your mindset, refining your message, deepening your understanding, then you become someone people can count on. You become a lighthouse in a world full of flashlights. You shine not because you're trying to be seen, but because you can't help but radiate something meaningful. Your presence becomes a contribution. When you become valuable, your relationships change. People come to you not just to be entertained, but to be inspired, to be guided, to be sharpened. You attract those who want to grow. You stop needing to beg for attention because people start seeking you out. That's the magic of value. It's quiet, but it's powerful. It's not loud, but it's lasting. Now let's be honest, it's harder to become valuable. It takes more time. It requires patience, learning, failing, adjusting, getting back up, staying committed. There's no shortcut to real growth. You've got to do the work, read the books, take the risks, pay attention to your patterns. Serve when no one's clapping, help when no one's filming, give when no one's watching. That's how you build value. And once you've got it, nobody can take it away from you. You see, popularity might open a door, but value is what keeps it open. Popularity might introduce you to a room, but value is what makes people remember you after you leave. So don't just ask yourself, how can I be seen? Ask yourself, what can I give? Don't focus on becoming famous. Focus on becoming useful, because when you become useful, you become unforgettable. And that's what matters in the long run, not how many people saw you today, but how many lives were better because you showed up. There's a world of difference between who people think you are and who you really are. Popularity is often built on image, on presentation, on how well you can craft a persona that fits the expectations of others. It's about appearances, but value, real value, is built on character, and character is who you are when the cameras are off, when no one's watching, when the applause fades. Character is what remains when image crumbles. That's the foundation you build when your aim is to become valuable. Image can be created overnight. With the right filter, the right lighting, the right caption, you can make yourself look successful, confident, even wise. But none of that means anything if it's not backed by substance. And substance doesn't show up overnight. It shows up over time in the hours you invest in yourself, in the principles you stand for, in the values you won't compromise. You build it when you keep your word even when it's hard. You build it when you show up consistently, not just when it's convenient. You build it when you choose discipline over comfort, purpose over popularity, growth over approval. See, when you're focused on image, your life becomes a performance. Every move is calculated. Every word is measured for effect. Every action is filtered through, how will this look? And that can get exhausting, because if you're always performing, you never get to be. You become a stranger to your own self. You forget what you think, what you believe, what you want, because you're too busy chasing what everyone else expects. That's the trap of popularity. It asks you to trade authenticity for acceptance. And over time, that's a price too high to pay. But when you choose to be valuable, the focus shifts inward. You stop asking, how can I impress? And start asking, how can I grow? You stop living to be liked and start living to be useful. Being valuable requires internal work. You develop patience. You build integrity. You learn the power of humility. You learn to listen before you speak, to serve before you shine, to think deeply before acting quickly. All of that shapes your character, and while it doesn't make for the loudest headlines, it makes for the strongest foundation. Character isn't glamorous, but it's powerful. It's not trendy, but it's timeless. It won't always make you popular, but it will always make you trusted. And trust, once earned, is the most valuable currency in relationships, in business, in leadership, and in life. People may admire your image, but they follow your character. They commit to people they believe in. They open up to people they know are real. And they stay loyal to people they trust will still be standing when everyone else has crumbled under the weight of their own performance. Let's talk about the process. Building character takes time. It starts with honesty, being honest with yourself about where you're strong and where you need work. It continues with discipline, showing up every day, even when you don't feel like it. It grows with consistency, doing the right thing, the hard thing, the uncomfortable thing, especially when no one's around to clap for you. This kind of effort doesn't get you a million views, but it gets you something far more powerful, self-respect. And from there, you earn the respect of others. The funny thing is, when you work on being valuable instead of being seen, people do start noticing you, but for the right reasons. They notice your work ethic. They notice your reliability. They notice your ability to solve problems, to stay calm under pressure, to deliver results without needing attention. And when people see that, they don't just want to watch you, they want to work with you. They don't just want to hear from you, they want to learn from you. That's what character does. It builds quiet authority. It creates magnetic influence, not because you asked for it, but because you earned it. There's a temptation in today's world to build your life around likes and approval, but likes don't last. Approval fades, and when your value is built on external praise, you become a prisoner to other people's opinions. But when you build yourself from the inside out, when you focus on growing your mindset, strengthening your habits, aligning your actions with your values, then you create something that cannot be taken away. You become someone who can be counted on, someone who brings value wherever they go, someone who stands firm when others fall. And in a world full of images, that kind of presence is rare. There's a law in the marketplace that never changes, no matter how loud the world gets, no matter how many followers someone has, no matter how viral a video becomes, and that law is simple. You get rewarded for the value you bring, not for how visible you are, not for how well known your name is, not for how polished your presence is online. The real rewards, financial, emotional, relational, spiritual, are reserved for those who bring something useful to the table. The ones who solve problems, who make things better, who offer answers in a world full of noise. You can have 1 million people watching you and still be broke. You can have 100,000 likes on a post and still be unsure, unskilled, and unready for real responsibility. Because attention isn't income, visibility isn't value, recognition isn't reliability. The world is full of people who are known, but not needed, loud but not trusted, seen but not significant. And that's the difference between being popular and being valuable. The marketplace doesn't ask how many fans you have. It asks, what can you do? Can you fix something? Can you lead someone? Can you teach something others need? Can you be counted on when the pressure hits? Real value doesn't just come from what you know either. It comes from what you can do with what you know. It comes from how well you can apply, how much you can contribute, how consistently you can deliver. A lot of people read books, take courses, attend seminars, but not everyone applies what they learn. Not everyone becomes the kind of person who shows up with answers, solutions, ideas, encouragement, or results. That's the separator. That's where real value gets created in action, not just knowledge. Now let's talk about reward. See, money follows value, influence follows value, opportunity follows value. That's why the focus has to shift away from asking, how can I be seen more? And toward asking, how can I help more? If you want to earn more, serve more. If you want more recognition, bring more solutions. The person who becomes indispensable, who becomes a source of strength and clarity and progress for others, that person doesn't have to chase rewards. The rewards find them, employers notice, clients return, partners recommend. That's how reputation gets built, not from a fancy profile, but from consistent performance. And let's not forget, value doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't have to shout. It just has to work. A hammer isn't beautiful, but it builds homes. A compass isn't loud, but it guides ships. You don't need to light up a room with charm if you can light up a mind with insight. You don't need to go viral if you can go deep with a few people and change their lives. Because in the long run, depth beats reach. Consistency beats charisma, and value beats volume. Now here's the challenge. In a world where attention is currency, it's easy to think being visible is the win. That if enough people see you, you'll succeed. But visibility without value is a trap. It gives you a spotlight before you've developed the strength to stand in it. And that's why some people collapse under fame. They weren't ready. They built attention before they built ability. They crafted an image before they developed identity. So when the crowd showed up, they had nothing to offer but noise, and the crowd moved on. That's why you've got to build in the dark, study before anyone claps, serve before anyone sees, grow before anyone notices. Because when the spotlight does come, and if you're valuable, it will come, you'll be ready. You won't be guessing or pretending. You'll be equipped, and that's when you rise, not as a trend, but as a trusted voice, not as an influencer, but as a contributor, not as a temporary success, but as a permanent force for good. The beautiful part of all this is that value is something you can build starting today. You don't need permission. You don't need a platform. You don't need a camera, an audience, or a big stage. You need a decision to grow, to serve, to contribute, to become a person who shows up with something to offer. Because the minute you do that, you step into a different category. The world begins to treat you differently, not because of your name, but because of your nature, not because of your fame, but because of your function. You become useful, and in a noisy world, usefulness is rare. There's something seductive about popularity. It's fast, it's loud, it comes with likes, shares, comments, and applause. When you get a taste of it, it feels like success. People know your name. They react to what you say. They recognize your face, and it feels good. But the truth is, popularity has a short memory. Today's viral star is tomorrow's forgotten face. The crowd cheers today and scrolls past you tomorrow. Popularity doesn't last. It fades with the next trend, the next influencer, the next distraction. But value, real, consistent value, compounds with time. And while it may grow slower, it grows stronger, deeper, and more meaningful. Compounding is a principle most people understand financially. You invest a little, you wait. You reinvest the returns, and over time, that small investment becomes something substantial. But what many miss is that this same law applies to value. Every time you sharpen your skills, every time you serve someone with excellence, every time you do your work with integrity, every time you help someone solve a problem, you're investing value. Maybe no one sees it right away. Maybe there's no standing ovation. Maybe your name doesn't trend, but it counts. It builds, and with consistency, that value starts to multiply. The difference is that popularity starts big and often dies small. But value starts small and grows into something massive. Popularity is like a spark, impressive, flashy, but gone in seconds. Value is like a slow, burning fire. It might take time to ignite, but once it does, it warms everything around it and refuses to go out. The person who focuses on popularity wants everything fast. They want the audience before the ability. They want the stage before the preparation. But the one who focuses on value understands the long game. They don't need the spotlight today. They're building for something far more powerful than attention. They're building trust, respect, and lasting impact. This is why you must be careful not to measure your worth by the volume of your visibility. Just because the world isn't clapping yet doesn't mean you're not valuable. Some of the most powerful seeds grow in silence. The farmer doesn't panic when the seed doesn't sprout overnight. He understands the roots are growing first. The foundation is forming, and once it's ready, then the growth shows above the surface. Your value is the same. At first, it's invisible. It looks like quiet study, focused effort, sacrifices no one sees, choices that don't get attention. But it's not wasted. It's multiplying beneath the surface. Eventually, the world starts to notice, not because you demanded attention, but because you delivered results. Not because you shouted, but because you showed up. The compound effect of years of personal growth, of helping others, of doing your best in moments that seemed small. It starts to echo. People begin to talk about you not because you made noise, but because you made a difference. And that kind of recognition is powerful, because it's not built on image, it's built on impact. Now here's the beauty of value that compounds. It doesn't just change your life. It starts to change the lives around you. Because when you're valuable, you become a source of growth for others. You become the person they go to for wisdom, for guidance, for solutions. And every life you touch becomes a new investment. Your value doesn't stay limited to your personal journey. It becomes a ripple, expanding, strengthening, influencing more than you ever imagined. And it all started with a quiet decision to grow, to contribute, to be useful instead of popular. The danger with chasing popularity is that it makes you reactive. You're always watching the crowd, adjusting your words, shifting your image, responding to the trends. But when you chase value, you become proactive. You lead, you innovate, you build things that last. And the truth is, the world is filled with people who are popular for a season and forgotten in the next. But the world needs people of value, builders, thinkers, leaders, helpers. The demand for value never goes away. You don't have to be famous to be in demand. You just have to be consistent, trustworthy, and excellent at what you do. So while popularity might give you a temporary high, value gives you permanent strength. Popularity might give you access to a room, but value gives you a seat at the table. And the more you invest in becoming a person of value, in what you know, in how you serve, in how you treat others, the more that value begins to attract opportunities that popularity can never sustain. Because when the trends shift and the spotlight moves on, the valuable person is still standing, still growing, still needed. And that is the real power of a life built on value that compounds over time. There's something sobering about realizing how quickly people forget. That viral video that had everyone talking last month, forgotten. That trending topic that dominated every feed just last week. Replaced, that name that everyone was shouting, quoting, admiring, now barely mentioned. This is the nature of popularity. It's tied to the moment. It thrives on novelty. It exists only as long as it continues to entertain or impress. But legacy is different. Legacy is not built in the moment. It's built over a lifetime, and it's built by value. A valuable life leaves an imprint, not just an impression. It's not about how many people know you. It's about how many lives are better because of you. Popularity is measured by followers, reactions, applause. Legacy is measured by growth, transformation, and contribution. The question isn't how many people cheer for you. The question is how many people changed because of what you said, what you did, and how you lived. That's where real meaning is found, not in fame, but in fruit. The crowd remembers the popular for a moment. They remember the entertainer, the performer, the sensation. But the ones they never forget are the ones who showed up in times of need, who gave them hope when things were hard, who offered wisdom that carried them through a storm. That's value, and it doesn't always come with applause. It's often quiet, often unrecognized in the moment, but deeply remembered in the heart. And when someone thinks of you years later and says, "They helped me," or "That moment changed me," you've left something popularity never could, a legacy. Living a valuable life means choosing long-term impact over short-term recognition. It means asking better questions, not "How can I get attention today?" but "What can I contribute today that still matters years from now?" It means living with principles, not just personality. It means investing in people, not just an image. You begin to understand that people won't remember what you wore or how perfectly your words landed. They'll remember how you made them feel, what you taught them, how you treated them when there was nothing to gain. One of the marks of a valuable life is how you show up when the lights are off, when there's no audience, no crowd, no reward. Because it's in those quiet decisions, the ones nobody claps for, that your legacy is really being written. When you mentor someone without a camera rolling, when you forgive someone without making a show of it, when you do the right thing when it would have been easier to do the popular thing, those moments might not go viral, but they go deep. They create ripples that touch lives far beyond what you can see. Think about the people who shaped your life. Maybe it was a teacher who believed in you, a parent who sacrificed without needing recognition, a friend who stood by you in silence when the world turned away. These aren't always the people with a platform, but they were powerful, because their value wasn't about being seen, it was about being present. Their actions might not have made headlines, but they made you. And that's what living a life of value looks like. It's less about being admired and more about being remembered for the right reasons. When you pursue a life of value, you begin to shift your focus away from the noise. You don't need to compete for attention. You start thinking about what kind of example you're setting, what kind of wisdom you're passing on, what kind of standards you're upholding. You begin to build something that lasts, not a reputation built on trends, but a foundation built on truth. You're not just trying to be liked, you're trying to be useful. And in the process, you become someone worth remembering, someone worth following, someone worth thanking. And here's the greatest return of a valuable life. You inspire others to do the same. When people see someone who has chosen substance over style, depth over display, purpose over popularity, it gives them permission to do the same. Your life becomes a quiet invitation for others to rise higher, dig deeper, live fuller. You may never know how far your influence reaches, but it reaches. You may never hear about every life you touched, but you touched them. Because value multiplies, it spreads, and it lasts longer than anything popularity could ever promise. You don't need to trend to matter. You don't need to be loud to lead. You don't need to be followed by millions to be remembered by one in a way that changes their life. The power of value is that it's not tied to recognition, it's tied to meaning. And when you live with meaning, you leave behind something stronger than attention, stronger than applause, stronger than a moment. You leave behind a trail, a story, a standard, a legacy that others can follow long after you're gone.